Today I'm going to do a test of all 8 of these different solutions that you can use for starching and stiffening your fabric for your quilting units. So let's see how these perform. For this test, because I have used a couple of these products since I last kind of cleaned this thing off, I'm going to go ahead, just to avoid cross-contamination, I'm going to go ahead and do this on this scrap piece of fabric that I have. I have all of these half square triangles that I am making up for my Ohio Star project. And so I have trimmed these down. These are going to be 5 inches. So I have trimmed them to where they should be 5 inches. So what I am going to do is I'm going to press it open and then get it pressed open in the seam here. And then I will try whatever product. The first product that I want to try out is this June Tailor Quilter Starch Savvy. It claims to be fragrance-free, flake-free, and it's for stiffening fabric, so I like that. I can control the level of stiffness with a single or multiple application, so if I want it stiffer, I can make it more stiff by spraying multiple times. And then basically on this, it's going to be hold the bottle 6 to 10 inches away from the fabric and spray lightly, let it soak in, and then go ahead and iron it. My first product is the June Tailor Quilter Starch Savvy. So immediately what I noticed with this one is that I was pretty far away, but it's still like really concentrated when it sprays out, so I'm not really a fan of the nozzle here. It does have kind of a strange smell to it. It's like sort of a chemical smell. So here is the result of that one. Right away I can see that it's not pressing down that seam as much as I'd like, but I have tested this one out before in the past day, and on previous things that I tested it out on, it was getting that seam to lay down pretty well. So I think potentially it's just the test conditions being unpredictable. So this is how it looks from the front here. It does seem to have about a medium stiffness to it. So that is the June Tailor Quilting Starch Savvy. Next up is the Aleene Stiffen Quik. And so this is a fabric stiffening spray. It is meant to be washable. With this one, it says spray 6 to 8 inches away from the project until wet. Now this says to let dry approximately 1 hour or speed dry with a hair dryer 6 inches away. I am going to iron with this, and what I will do with this is I will use parchment over this. I have used a similar product in a video called the Spray and Bond Fabric Stiffener. This one rated really well in the starch test that I did around New Year's, and so these should be very similar, and I'm anxious to see how this one holds up. The next product is the Aleene Stiffen Quik, so I'm going to go ahead and spray that on. Okay. Let's see, I think a little bit up there. Okay. What I'm going to do, try to do this parchment here. Okay. Alright. The reason why I am doing the parchment is because otherwise this is going to really stick to the plate of the iron otherwise. So if I tried to do it directly, it would do that. So I'm doing that just to get it heated up enough, and then I can go ahead and do this directly without it sticking, I hope. So this is with the Aleenes, and the seam is very nice and flat and pretty much, you know, kind of sticking to the other side, which I like. This is what the other side of this looks like, so it's very nice and clean. It has a bit more stiffness to it. This is on the stiffer side of starch products. So that is the Aleene Stiffen Quik. And then another product here, the Odif Fabric Booster. And so this one is similar to the Aleenes as well. This one says it's acid-free, so that's kind of a nice type of a thing, because I don't know how much any of these things are acid-free unless they say so. This one, we have to shake it up before each use, and then I spray it onto the fabric, and then this one says to cover it with parchment paper, and then iron it. So that is what I will be doing with the Odif. Now we have the Odif Fabric Booster Easy Fabric Stiffener, and this one I have to shake before each use, so I'm going to do that. So this one actually has a fairly strong fragrance kind of a smell, so it's definitely one that does have fragrance to it, and it is rather strong. This one said that I needed the parchment, so I will do that. So the seam is definitely nice and flat, just the way that I like it. And there's a pretty good amount of stiffness. I would put this at kind of a medium, somewhere between medium and heavy type of a starching action there, or stiffening action. There is definitely a smell to this. It's not an unpleasant smell, but if you are sensitive to fragrance, this could be a problem. And so this is the Odif fabric stiffener. Next up is the Kershaw's traditional laundry starch. So this is a dry starch. This is a starch that I have to mix up. The directions here are if I was doing it in a washing machine, so I'm not doing that. And let's see, oh, for hand wash. Okay, so for hand wash, and then, yeah, so for hand wash, it's kind of like if you're dunking it in, so I won't be doing that. So on this, I'm going to do like a 10-to-1 on the Kershaw's. Now for the Kershaw's traditional laundry starch. And this one, I did go ahead and put it into a spray bottle because it does look like it actually has the ability to be in a spray bottle. I did a 10-to-1 ratio on that, so 10 parts water to 1 part starch. There we go. Okay. A little bit there. All right. I'm just trying to... There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do parchment on this just because it's so wet that I think that's a good idea. Just to get it started. Am I smelling that stuff? I wonder. So I would say that this is kind of a lighter side of starched. It did an excellent job flattening that seam, so I definitely like that. There is some residue. I haven't seen that so far with the others. It does look really great on the other side, so the residue isn't seeping through or anything. And so that is the Kershaw's traditional laundry starch. So the next step is this Linit starch. So this is a concentrated liquid, so automatically I do have to dilute it. I think that if I didn't dilute it, it would probably be a very stiff type of a formulation. So I'm kind of tempted to try this undiluted and then also try it diluted to their specifications to make it sprayable. And then the directions here, shake well, and then they have a chart, heavy starch, medium starch, light starch. They basically say what the ratio needs to be of the starch to the water, so I will be following those directions. It looks like here in the spray starch they have the directions right there. So I'm going to follow those directions, and I'll go for the heavy because I like my quilting projects to be stiffer. That will be the Linit starch. Now I am doing the Linit starch, and according to this, I needed 7 fluid ounces of the starch to 9 fluid ounces of the water, so a 7 parts to 9 parts ratio is what I did. That is to get the heavy starch result. So I have that mixed up in this. The reason why I'm spraying so much is it's really hard for me to tell if it's actually penetrating well. So that's why I'm doing that. Because I did get comments from people that were like, oh wow, that's a lot of spraying that you're doing. Well, it's just really hard to tell. Especially on a dark fabric like this. But just in general, it's just hard to tell. And I want to make sure that I get enough of a coating that it has a fair test and a fair comparison against the others. And so that's why I do that. In regular practice, maybe you're not spraying it that much. But I am doing it that way because I am trying to give it a pretty fair comparison against the other tests that I'm doing so that it's got the ability to have the entire half square triangle nice and coated. And already with this, I can see that there is some flaking residue. So here's what it looks like. There's kind of some flaking residue. This is a very light kind of stiffness in my opinion. This is not what I would really characterize as a medium, but you know, there is a little bit of stiffness to it. So if you want kind of a light starching action, then that can be a good way to go. And as promised, I am also going to do the Linit starch with no dilution. So that is going to be this test. So here we go. Oh, yes. Okay, this is much more what I like. So I think what I'll be doing whenever I use that Linit starch is I'm going to not dilute it, because this has got a really nice heavy starchness to it compared to this one. See how that flops? And then this is much stiffer, more like a heavy cardstock. They both produce a really nice flat seam. They both have a certain amount of residue, but from the front, there's no residue. So that's not a worry if you like to starch from the back and do that. So there's not really any smell to this either. This seems to be a fragrance-free type of a starch. So that's also a positive. That is the Linit concentrated starch. Now we have the Mod Podge, and this is Mod Podge that is formulated for fabric. I am going to dilute this down. One of the things I did in the video that I did at New Year's was I took regular school glue and I did a 4-to-1 ratio, so I think that should work here. I wasn't finding any information on the internet about people diluting it down to use it for starch, so I'm interested in seeing how that goes. But this is washable, as long as it's not like the full type of a thing and dried for a long time. It is washable. And so I think if I dilute it down, it'll be even more washable. That is the Mod Podge. Now I am testing up a dilution of the Mod Podge for fabric. What I ended up doing, this was so thick that I ended up doing a dilution of a 10-to-1. So 10 parts water, 1 part Mod Podge, and it gets it to this kind of viscosity, which I think should work in a sprayer. Gosh, it's just, I don't feel like I'm coating it very well. There was a lot of spritzing, but I felt like I wasn't coating it very well. Since this is a glue, I am going to go ahead and use parchment. Okay, that was sticking, but I should be good now. Okay, so this is how it turned out with that 10-to-1 dilution. There's no residue, so that's kind of nice. There's no smell, but Mod Podge definitely seems to have a smell that is reminiscent of paint, so just keep that in mind. I can kind of feel almost like a very, very slight amount of stiffness, but it did do a nice job flattening the seam here. So that is the Mod Podge for fabric. So here we have the flatter. I had several people recommend the flatter to me, and I have been wanting to try it. I went ahead and I got the scentless because that is going to be one of the things that I grade as part of the criteria, because I know that a lot of people are sensitive to fragrance, and I am sensitive to a certain amount of fragrance as well. And this is just pretty simple. You just spray it on. This is also one where they say you can do additional coats to make it even stiffer. So I think this is something where it doesn't get it really stiff, but it's pretty good for getting the wrinkles out. And then if you want to get it stiffer, you just keep reapplying. So that is flatter. Now I am trying out the flatter spray. So one of the things about this is the company's name is Soak, and the sprayer really does seem to soak the product right into there. It's a lot of product that ends up going in. So this is how the flatter goes. It doesn't really do any stiffening whatsoever, but it does do a very nice flattened seam. I will go ahead, since this is dry, I will go ahead and apply another spraying of this just to see if it gets any stiffer. According to the bottle, you can keep applying extra coats to try to get it to a desired amount of stiffness, so that's why I'm doing this. So this is after the second coat of the flatter, and I just don't detect any stiffness whatsoever. This is not a spray that I think is going to be good for stiffness. I think it's just more of an all-purpose kind of ironing, you know, getting your wrinkles out kind of a spray. And then also if you want to maintain the natural hand of the fabric but have a really flat seam, it works great that way as well. So that is the flatter spray. My final product that I am testing out is this Magic brand Premium Quilting and Crafting Spray. It is fragrance and flake-free. This one is basically just the same type of a thing. It says about an 8-inch distance to the materials. And then, as far as I could tell, I don't see anything about having to shake this one up, and you just spray it. I've already used this a little bit, and I like it so far, so I'm very interested to see how this stacks up against these other products. So that is the Magic Premium Quilting and Crafting Spray. So the final product is the Magic Premium Quilting and Crafting Spray. I went ahead and flipped this around to the side where it was the first side, but flipped over over, because this is very similar to the June Tailor, so I don't feel like I'm going to really cross-contaminate too much that way. So I'm able to pull that up. It has a medium kind of a stiffness to it. It's a very nice flattened seam there, which is nice. There's no residue. It's great from both sides. And one of the things that I really like about this is actually the trigger that they have on these bottles is very nice for being able to get an even spray and get a pretty good amount of product at once, but not too much. It's kind of like the perfect amount of misting action that comes out of this bottle. That is the Magic Premium Quilting and Crafting Spray. And now, for the moment that you've been waiting for, I am going to rate all of these different starches and stiffening solutions. So coming in at number 8 in my rankings is the Mod Podge. And the reason why this is number 8 is because it is a glue. It happens to be a permanent glue, which I didn't quite realize when I bought it, because technically you can wash it out, and it says it's water-based. And so I am unsure with this what would happen over time with a piece that I treat this way. It also was a little fiddly trying to mix this up to get the 10 parts water to 1 part Mod Podge ratio, and even after doing that, I really didn't feel like the stiffness result was worth all that effort. It was about a medium type of a stiffness on there. And my stiffness ratings I have rated from 0 to 5. So 0 is no stiffness whatsoever. And then the expectation is that there should be at least a 1. This I rated at more of a 3. And then another point about this was it had a very strong, unpleasant smell when I opened the jar. The smell did not translate into going onto the piece, so it doesn't really get that much of a minus for that. But if you are sensitive to fragrances and strong chemical smells, this could still be a problem. And then at number 8 is the flatter. And the reason for that is because this had absolutely no stiffening quality whatsoever. I rate it at a 0. And even when I did the second application, there was no increase. There is not even going to like a 1. I also feel that this is very overpriced for what it is. It's only 8.5 fluid ounces. And at $15, I feel like that is pretty overpriced. It does create a nice flat seam, but honestly, you could just buy the cheapest plain vodka at the liquor store, put it into a sprayer, you will get the same result. Coming in at number 6 is the Kershaw's Traditional Laundry Starch. This one was okay as a starch. It delivered a 2 out of the 5 scale for the stiffness, so there is a little bit of stiffness to it, and if you like a light amount of stiffness, this could be a good option. However, it had quite a lot of residue. As you can see there, there's a lot of residue there. You do have to mix that up, and so there is a little bit of an inconvenience factor there. What is nice about it is that it is pretty economical, and so you can actually mix up a lot of product out of this, and so that does make it pretty economical at $11. But I felt like the residue was a factor there, and also just the fact that it didn't really stiffen as much as I like things to stiffen whenever I'm working with it. And then there is a little bit of a mess factor here, like I have this powder that's on parts of my work table from mixing it as well. Now I get to the point of things that it's more just kind of finer points of differences, because the rest of them I actually like pretty well, and I do intend to work with them with my future projects. So coming in at number 5 is the June Tailor Starch Savvy. The nice thing about this one is that compared to other similar solutions like this, which in this case would be this Magic brand here, this was actually fairly economical. It was also something that I could get in a local store, and I did. And so that was nice. Everything else here was something, or with the exception of the Aleenes, was something that I had ordered on Amazon and gotten it in. That's a little inconvenient when you have to do that. So it's nice that I can get this readily in a store. It does provide a pretty good amount of stiffness. I rate this at a 3 out of 5. So it is definitely a solid medium stiffness. This is absolutely a level of stiffness that I would be happy with when working with fabric to either prepare the fabric or to make like a basic unit like this. I feel like I do have the ability to keep spraying for further construction, and it's not going to get too stiff. Coming in at number 4 is the Magic Premium Quilting and Crafting Spray. I really like this a lot. The trigger is wonderful on that, and so that is why, even though this one was a fair amount more expensive, expensive at $13 for this bottle compared to this one being $8.50 for the bottle. The trigger on this one was just not as good as the trigger on this one. This trigger was the best, and it's really the best trigger that I've come across in all of the starches I've tried off of all of these different tests. It does deliver a nice medium starch kind of result as well, and there is no smell to this, so that is very nice, and there's no residue. I feel like it's just a good all-around product if you're willing to spend that money, and they do have refills available for this as well, so that's also an option. And so that one came in at number 4. At number 3, and this one just narrowly ended up at the number 3 spot, is the Odif Fabric Booster. The reason why it is not a number 2, or tied for number 2, is because of the price. This one was $10 for just shy of 7 fluid ounces of product. But it does deliver a really nice result. This one was actually the stiffest result out of everything I tried. And I rate the stiffness at a 4.5 out of 5. So, I mean, as you can see here, this is very, very stiff. Also, what kind of marked this down is it does have a fragrance to it. And while I did not find the fragrance unpleasant, there are people who are sensitive to fragrance, and so just rating this as a general product, I would have to rate it down just because of that factor. There's also no residue, so that is a very nice thing. That is a very nice feature of this. So I have that one at a 3. At number 2 is the comparable product, the Aleene Stiffen Quik. The nice thing about this is, like the June Tailor, I was able to get this in a local store. Also, the price point was attractive on this at $5.50. This one is 8 fluid ounces, so it's 1 ounce more than the Odif right there. There is no residue to this. It delivers a very nice stiff result. I rated this as a 4 out of 5 on the stiffness. I think this is a really good product for, particularly if you want to do like I did on the half square triangle video, where I was temporarily adhering the fabric pieces together before sewing the seams to make those half square triangles. This one and the Odif would be particularly good for that and effective. So that is the Aleene's. And then number 1 kind of took me by surprise. Number 1 is the Linit Starch. And the reason why this is number 1 is actually because of what happened when I tested this out, not diluting it and having it at full concentrate. And so this one delivered a very nice stiff result. I rated that stiffness at a 4, so the same as the Aleene's here. There is residue, but it's a minor amount of residue. If I'm spraying from the back, any of these that do the residue isn't on the front. But the biggest reason why I rated this one as the top marks for the test was just how economical this is. This is half a gallon of solution, and so at 64 ounces, I would be able to fill up 4 of these. And so for $17 at Amazon, or $15 if you bought it off of Walmart.com, you could get the equivalent of 4 of these bottles. You could put it into a nice trigger sprayer like this, and you're good to go, and you have a solution that delivers a very nice, crisp, and stiff result. You can also dilute it down if you prefer less stiffness, and so that works really well. And then also, there was no fragrance to this, so there's not going to be any problems that way. And so just a good all-around starch solution right here. Now, in the beginning, I did state that I was having all of these exactly at 5 inches. I have measured all of these. None of these products create any shrinkage whatsoever. They are all still at 5 inches as well. So just in case you wanted to know the result of that. So I hope that this has been a very informative test. Feel free to check out the first test I did, where I tested out 13 different solutions that ranged from commercial solutions like the ones here to home remedies, and a couple of very unconventional types of solutions in there as well. And until next time, thanks for watching.